Hello, my name is Sasha, and welcome back to this week's episode 6 of Mentally Motivational. This week, our topic is the stresses of work from a doctor's perspective, and her thoughts and opinions on mental health in teens, adults, and just topics surrounded by that. So, without further ado, here is our next guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Sasha. So my name is Prachi Dog. I'm a physician. I'm board certified in internal medicine and nephrology, which is a kidney specialist. And I work for a large multi-specialty group, and I work in different locations in the hospital, in the outpatient clinic, and at the dialysis center. I'm actually also the geographic wellness leader for our physician group for the Santa Cruz division. And this is basically part of the well-being committee for physicians where we, make sure that we're supporting our physicians, our doctors, and advanced practitioners, nurse practitioners, and mid-levels in whatever they need from a well-being perspective. So yeah, that's me. I've been in California for about 8 years, and before that, I was on the East Coast, mainly in Boston and in Philly and in Baltimore for a little bit. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and I'm looking forward to hearing your responses and thoughts.
Okay.
So, my first kind of question that I had was, as a doctor, from a doctor's point of view, how has your work life changed? Like the experience, how many hours, that kind of thing, because of this pandemic.
Yeah, so this is I mean, we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and there is seems to be no end in sight. When we first started with this back in February or March, we were just not sure what to do, and then we started adjusting, and then we felt like this would get better by the summer, and it didn't, and now we are in the midst of it, and there with no seemingly no end in sight. Hopefully the vaccine will be our saving grace. But a lot's changed, from my perspective. I mean, I can talk about work and personal life. Everything takes more time now because we have to be so careful, with making sure that everything's sanitized, going to the hospital and then changing into scrubs and, seeing patients and scrubbing down workstations and phones and, stethoscopes and all that. It's just, a lot more time that we have to factor in. um, we are socially distancing just between us, so we used to hang out in the break room in the doctor's lounge, discuss cases, just have a cup of tea or coffee, and that doesn't happen anymore. I miss the camaraderie that we used to have, we used to sit in the office and bounce off interesting cases or talk about stuff that's important to us, and that's changed now. Now we do it on phone. The big change for us is doing televisits, telehealth, which we had never done before. And it was a big learning curve for us, to get used to, the video visits and looking at different platforms to do it, be it Zoom and FaceTime, and there's all kinds of HIPAA, regulations that we want to abide by. So that's still work in progress. And then for our patients too, for them to get used to all the technology that we have, is it's hard. And it's just uh, it's a little bit, it's bittersweet. There are some things that I can do, because now that we are doing Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings, there are some meetings that I can actually attend because I don't have to physically travel to that place. I can just do it on Zoom. And Yeah, so a lot has changed on the work front. um, it's you know I I think I've felt a lot more grateful for what I do, and for being able to be the frontline provider. And I think, despite all this, that is the one sort of saving grace through this pandemic. But life has just been a little bit of a topsy turvy right now.
It kind of turned like almost upside down through so many
Yeah.
in so many different ways. Like as students, our school life and kind of family life kind of changed because
Hmm.
as college students, so their kind of college experience turned out adults
Right.
with their work. Like everything kind of just turned upside down, and so many things
Right.
happened for better
Right.
or for worse. I think there's definitely some pros to this. However, there's a lot of cons, of course, as well as the health part of it that people are
Yeah.
um like getting sick because of this. So I'm just really for a vaccine so we can.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And then, talking about, so, for doctors who are actually moms or dads, they had that additional, pressure or stress of how are their kids going to do in school. Some kids really like structure, and some do okay without it. And so there's a lot of things that go behind. The financial aspect for some people is really important. So, yeah, there's a lot of changes that have happened in the physician community with all this. And I think we'll come out stronger. If it doesn't kill us, it makes us stronger, right? So
Yeah,
so yeah.
I think so too. Are there any things or techniques that you've learned to do over, especially this pandemic, that have like kept you like relaxed or calm, either in work or at home, depending on like stress?
Yeah, yeah. You probably know, maybe I've talked to you before about this, but I do breathing techniques and meditation. I've done them for, gosh, like 17 years. And that really helps me, because, with the breath, and with taking that time to focus on yourself, and meditating, you reach something that's inside of you, that's unaffected by all of this. So that really helps. I used to do 20 minutes of meditation at least once a day, and I still try to. Sometimes I do it in the car on my in the parking lot, and it really helps. But more so in the pandemic, it's been one of the things that I want to do every day, to stress relief. And often we don't see, or sometimes stress is lives in the subtlety. It's not very obvious until it gets to the point where our world starts crashing down sometimes. So, but it's good to tackle it when it's in that primitive stage, before it gets to a really crazy level. um, the other thing I've done is, having, the how do you say, some sort of cognitive reframing techniques, like, seeing a glass half full, or making sure that we are not, that our mind is not bothered by um, certain opinions or comments, not being a football of someone's opinion. Looking at, a life as something that's complementary. So, if we were never sick, we won't know what health means, and life is complementary. So just thinking of it from that perspective has helped. What's also helped for me is prioritizing, because there's so many things to do and so little time. And sometimes you just have to say, these are the three things I'm going to do right now, and the fourth one is important, but it can wait. And so, just prioritizing helps, because you have to get some time for yourself, and you can't be working like a machine. So yeah, so all that's helped. What else? I mean, the other things I do is, I've tried to go for a walk. I try to hydrate as much as I can. Some of the self-help,
Yeah,
caring for yourself techniques that we do. And just creating a little bit of a social network with
Yeah,
other people that you can talk to and vent sometimes. And all it doesn't change someone's, they're not going to do anything different when you went, but it's just an outlet for you to
yeah,
just get some of your thoughts out, and then you go along and do the things that you're supposed to do. So a lot of things, some social, some for yourself, but exercise and meditation and breathing has really been a very important part.
yeah, definitely. And I especially like that positive outlook and just doing stuff for yourself. I think it's really important for not only adults but also like kids because
Yeah.
like at least from a student's perspective, all this like work that we get because of online school, there's
Hmm.
it's so much different because of how much time you spend on screen, but also
Right.
you have very it's such a different change from
Yeah.
example the 7 years of school that you've been doing or
Yeah.
2 years. It's
Yeah.
completely different. And
Yeah.
at least for me, I spend so much more time doing work than I usually do. And I don't know if it's because I'm in a new grade
Mhm.
or because of this online, or maybe it's just a mix of both. But spending that time to take a walk or just meditate for even just like 5 minutes or just, I don't know, talk to a friend just to get that like kind of break from stress and that like pressure, I feel like is super important
Yeah.
in helping me this pandemic. And I think it's really important for everyone, whether you're
Yeah.
5, 50. It seems to
Yeah.
be a common thing to just take time. And it's hard because in this pandemic, it feels like, you know how you were saying prioritization, but it feels like we have so much to do and not enough time to do it.
Hmm.
Like I feel like people misprioritize by prioritizing school, work, money, I don't know, over like their self-health. And at one point, you can't prioritize your school if you don't prioritize yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's very well said. And because, I think what we don't realize is our mind wants to keep going, and our body needs that time to rest and recharge.
yeah,
So striking that balance is really important. What I've found is, whenever I've worked from home, there are a million distractors, and now that everyone's working from home, it is hard when there's four family members from working from home, and there's other things going on. So I think that is a big challenge, not only for me but my son and everyone else in the family, and how we deal with that, how we compartmentalize almost, the morning session, or however you want to do it. It's I think it requires some planning,
yeah,
but I mean, things, it can be done. It just requires a little bit of thought into it.
yeah. Speaking of which, as like a parent, has
Mhm.
your son improved or adapted well to this like online like virtual learning just situation?
It's hard to say if he's adapted, but I think he's doing okay. I think a lot of the credit goes to the school and the teachers. His elementary school teacher is really on top, and she's very good about communicating to parents if kids are lacking behind in their assignments. But mostly she'll tell the kid that this has to be done by this time, and he usually does it. Where we find difficulty is when the teacher says this is optional, and then the kid never does it, and so then we have to be on it that this is really something you should do. And that part, I think if they were in school they would have done it, and now they're at home, they just feel that it's a they get a free hand at
Yeah,
doing what they want. So that's been a little challenging, but honestly, again, it's at this point where I'm prioritizing what I need to do first, and as long as I mean, these are so very special circumstances, and I think it's most kids will be okay. I know there are some kids that do like the structure and they do need some attention. But so far, we've been doing okay in terms of management. We do try to have a structure for him so that, it doesn't necessarily mean that he needs to be on his computer for all of school. He can do some chores in between his breaks, and then he can catch up later on. But it's just something that gives him a little free time to
yeah,
think about other stuff and not be too glued on the screen.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
As like a, I'm trying to phrase this right. Like, okay, I know this isn't a very like open, like people don't talk about their mental health very openly, especially just both teenagers and adults. But
yeah.
do you have any like thoughts on other doctors in your field, their mental health, if you know, maybe not like the super personal parts, but just has their, I don't
Yeah,
know, confidence.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, the good thing about the pandemic is that it has, made people somewhat close to each other because we share so much, even though maybe on phone, but everyone feels so empathetic to
Yeah,
what everyone others are going through, and be it physician colleagues or patients, and along with gratitude there's also a sense of community and a sense of belongingness. So a lot of people do share with me what they're going through. One actually a good friend of mine, so it was her birthday yesterday, and we couldn't meet, and so another friend of mine and I, we bought her some flowers and chocolate, and we dropped them off at her doorstep, and then we said hi to her from far, and she really felt touched by it, and she was calling me and saying that thank you for doing this, and I feel like the world is caving in, and we thought this would be over, but it's not. And these are her words, feeling like everything's caving in and the pandemic is getting worse, and she's feeling anxious, she's feeling that some doctors are already in our community have COVID and they're fine, but they have COVID, and she's fearful of her getting it, her passing it on to her kid, and so there's a lot of mixed emotions, anxiety for one. There's depression in the community of doctors that I know of. A lot of doctors are actually taking help. They are we have uh, we have employee assistant programs and counselors through the program through EAP, and that's really useful. And we are actually encouraging people to make an appointment online and talk to them, and it really has helped a lot of people. So people who have anxiety and depression, their symptoms are a little bit worse, and thankfully they are getting help. But it is much more common now with the pandemic, and not every mental illness is diagnosed or can be diagnosed, but the stress is there, and sometimes it's hard to classify it as uh, generalized anxiety disorder or depression or dysthymia, but there's definitely a little more stress and a lot more mental illness. Some of our psychiatric colleagues were also saying, child psychiatrists were also saying that they're inundated with kids, who seek their expertise, um, and so it's a big problem. I think it's just something that we need to be aware of, and and be on a lookout, and hopefully we can help.
yeah, and it's so good that like you guys are offering this call for like even doctors to just call and to try to help and like remediate this like some
Mhm.
of the at least the anxiety and stress
Yeah.
because like from my point of view as a high schooler we have mental health centers and our counselors and
Mhm.
unfortunately there's such a stigma around it that people are afraid to talk to someone or reach out because
Mhm.
they're afraid of what others might think of them but at the end of the day it's so sad because it's really them that
Yeah.
is suffering inside and kind of it bottles up inside of you and you just I feel like even I'm probably sure as an adult and or as a doctor if you try to battle it all inside of you it'll probably impact your family your
Yeah.
work just everything so it's so great that you have like a place an outlet to
Yeah,
yeah
yeah, and all of these discussions are confidential, so there's really no reason to feel that you're putting yourself out there. Of course, I as a well-being committee member, I encourage people to come forward, and if they have any questions or need resources, that's really, I'm not a counselor, but I do know of resources that we can provide to our doctors. So and thankfully, our doctors know that, and they are not afraid to seek help. And we have the resources. So so that is the one good thing that that has happened. We've had a lot more resources. It's overwhelming for them sometimes, the EAP and the counselors, but we're getting by.
That's great. Yeah, that's so great. Um, between like adjusting as a parent or as a doctor, between adjusting to the difference after this pandemic in home, like trying to get like with your family or at
Mhm.
work, which one do you think is has taken more of a stressful impact on you?
Um, I think, I mean, I wouldn't call it stressful, only because we've adjusted to it, and we have, a lot of the things that I do for my personal care. But definitely work. Work is, there's a lot of moving parts, and even before the pandemic, work is always, I wouldn't say stressful, but it requires your heart to be in it, and our patients, you have to put yourself in their shoes and see what they're going through, and that can take a toll on you. If you hear their stories, or if you see a bad outcome, it puts you at a spot where you're just sad, and it's a not it's a place I want to be, but then you also need to come out of that place to take care of the next patient. You can't be sitting um, with the same thought, because then you won't be functional. So and that part is a little harder now with the pandemic, because we see so many sick people, younger people who get sick, and that just breaks my heart to see 40 and 50-year-olds with who have bad outcomes. So that is the stressful part of the pandemic, is taking care of the sick people. um, and home, luckily for me, is almost like a well-oiled machine, because we have so much help at home, with my husband's parents staying with us for the all through the pandemic. So we are sheltering essentially, and so that's been a big relief. And but that's not the case for a lot of people who juggle work and home and by themselves, and with potentially two working parents, and kids that that are left to do what they want to do. So it's hard for me, though. Work is a little more demanding, I would say. Not stressful, but demanding.
I think that's also kind of why the rise between isolation, not being able to actually see people, meet people like
Mhm.
you're used to, the sudden change, and then just
Yeah.
overall like this sudden new feeling of like I don't have a lot of support because
Mhm.
work is demanding a lot more and family I might not have for some people, and that might take a toll internally, and that might
Yeah.
even worsen, and I'm sure it worsens their anxiety and
Yeah.
possibly their depression, and I can only imagine how hard it must be, especially if you don't have like close family that you can live with, because obviously we can't just go out every single day with this pandemic.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
especially for like adults and I guess teenagers too, because I think that leads me to my next question is like, especially in these recent years, but especially in this pandemic, a lot of the mental health in teenagers have worsened
Mhm.
significantly. There's plenty of studies, and I think it's just a common theme, and sadly, in a bunch of people these days. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that, like in teenagers?
Yeah, it's definitely worsened. And I don't have teenagers at home, but I know from from the talk that I hosted with our child psychiatrist, is there were a lot of questions around teenagers not doing what they're supposed to, or waking up at 11 and going to bed at 3 a.m. and things like that, and questions around that. Everything's disturbed. Their schedule is not what it used to be, and I think at least in that talk, parents struggled with the fact that their teenagers are basically doing things, um, uh, the way they were not doing.
Yeah.
And I think the takeaway from that talk was the child psychiatrist saying it's okay, let as long as they have tasks that they're doing, and give them a little bit of a break, because some kids don't vocalize and some verbalize that, but they are stressed, and then we are very vocal about saying this is what we are dealing with, but some kids don't. They feel everything, but they are not able to express it, and so they express it in different ways, like waking up late or doing stuff out of the norm. And that we have to give that to them. That's their way of adjusting. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that some kids are going out of the norm. We have to respect that, and then we have to support them and work together honestly in making sure that they're getting to what their goals are.
Yeah.
So but it is, I mean, there were a lot of comments about teenagers and who are I mean, it also affects the people who are applying, kids who are applying for college. It just makes it really hard for them to figure out how they're going to be graded next year, or what counts as good grades or good score, or whatnot, for for the they're essentially their careers on the line right now. And that's a lot of stress for them too.
Yeah.
um, but but they may not admit it, they may show it as in different ways. You just have to just be supportive and be cognizant of what they're going through.
Yeah, it's so important to be aware that we are changing, and because of that, we all adapt in different ways.
Hmm.
And I mean, some might be perfectly fine, and some might be a little out of the box, but just because you don't see someone just suffering on the outside, it doesn't mean they're suffering on the inside. And I mean, for lack of better words, in these unprecedented times, you'd never really know what to expect. Like, I couldn't tell you what would happen next year for
Yeah.
as a sophomore for my junior year, but especially like you said, the seniors who, first of all, they're applying for college, which must be incredibly stressful. But then next year, they're like, am I going to go to college?
Right.
What's going to happen to my college? Like those times, and even like college seniors who are graduating college and they're like, what's my job, like how am I gonna go to this new job, or what's going to be in store for that. And I feel like this lack of certainty and unknowing what's
Hmm.
going to happen is causing a lot of inner turmoil and stress on a ton of different people, both
Yeah.
adults and kids.
Yeah, it's just that, yeah, kids have their unique way of expressing it sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's something we have to be aware of, and help them or support them, because they're so sensitive. We think that if they don't say anything, they don't know, but they know everything, and they're so sensitive.
Yeah.
I know there were some kids who overheard financial issues and whatnot. I mean, there's things beyond just the medical aspect, or the disease or the virus itself. So yeah, it's hard for a lot of people to um, to feel normal and do the things that they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
But I'm just hoping that there will be a vaccine to be
Mhm.
and this will be we will get a better sense of normalcy. But I think throughout this we've learned a lot about ourselves. I know personally I've learned so much about myself and people that I became close with because of this. So I'm grateful for what I've learned, but also because of this is such a hard time for so many people. I'm
Yeah.
just hoping and wishing that we get over this. And I know the mental health, this well, it has been coming way before this pandemic, and it'll come after, just like it's
Mhm.
during.
Yeah.
But hopefully just having conversations like these and talking about it is really important for everyone. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. And I'm sure all of our viewers would love to hear all this. And it's really great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, this is such an important topic that we don't talk about, and where I grew up, we never talked about it. And in this country, we have the opportunity to talk about it and address it, and destigmatize it. So any opportunity we get, we should utilize it to the fullest.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the pandemic has just gotten some aspects of our life that we weren't aware of, and I think we move forward, and learn, and we may fall down, but we'll get up and we'll march forward and beat this thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me, and thank you to everyone who's watched this. And please stay tuned for our next episode on Mentally Motivational.
Okay, thank you.